share a bunch of interviews you won't have heard, photos you haven't seen, from Ash Sutton's record-breaking season where he took a 4th British Touring Car Championship title. There's a few video snippets in here too. You might have read parts of the interviews in Motor Racing UK and TC Touring Car magazine this year. You might have seen some of the photos there too. But there are many more, and rather than hoard them, I thought it would be better to share them. And I hope some of the photos and videos and interviews can give you a different angle on things from what you've seen across the season. First, however, a quick intro, an important thing, something I love: food.
A few beers tonight?
Chinese is what I want, but it all depends when I get home. What's time? Well, it might be a bit tight for a Chinese, but we'll...
McDonald's for me, like...
Yeah, well, it's going to be probably KFC or McDonald's for me, but...
What do you have?
See, between a sweet chip spicy wrap, the old crispy one in McDonald's, or a Big Mac. But if I go Big Mac, I'm going full out, so I go like 20 nuggets, top it off with a little McFlurry.
Have you not tried them cheese balls things?
Oh my god, we get a share box of them. Me and the missus.
You can tell I don't share. Burger King one's better, like.
Are they?
Oh, I
well,
expect spicy.
Them. I'm not a fan of Burger King. So.
Are you?
Not a fan. But yeah, the old cheese bites, mozzarella cheese bite, tomato sauce and perfect.
I planned this video in March, photo and interview look at the champion season. So that could have meant that this could have been a Tom Ingram, Jake Hill, Colin Turkington and Josh Cook or Dan Camish vid, or somebody else, if the season had turned out differently. But what we saw was a bit of history, and it kind of went a bit like this. Round one at Donington, it didn't quite go to plan for Sutton. Well, it did at first, topping the opening practice session and qualifying looked good after the first session of a two-parter. A 10th and a bit ahead of teammate at row bottom, with the other Dan, Camish that is, another 10th back, didn't translate to pole, with row bottom taking that. The new track limit rules for this year bit Sutton, but first, this.
We threw pole away there. We were on for pole and yeah, I threw it away. Just played it too. So I lost my track, my original fastest lap, which would have been good enough for pole. I lost that through the final chicane due to just touching the green. So on the final lap, I just played it safe just to not have to do that again and played it too safe. So I left so much on the table. It was a bit of a joke. But hey ho, we live and learn. We locked out the front row. That is the key bit. And yeah, I'd rather lose it to a teammate than to someone else.
As you heard there, Ash knew there was more, but those new rules that the whole field was having to come to terms with and had stripped him of a pole time, would they change things?
Is it a case of kind of unlearning what you already know because of the new regulations and whatnot with track limits?
A little bit. It's you kind of have to throw it over your shoulder with what we've now done for the past X amount of years and start from scratch. But yeah, it's not too dissimilar, but it's still just in the back of your mind. I think it's the right way of putting it.
For race one, that wouldn't really matter. A 3-1 with Hill and row bottom at the start ended the first race of the season fairly early, with a bit of debate as to who was at fault. Race 2 was wet and Sutton climbed from 26th to 15th. The thing about working trackside for that race for me was that I didn't know what was going on. On the first lap, the course car came down a crane of curves and it had a bunch of cars behind it that had pitted, changed to wets and come back out, and they were actually racing. It was a bit crazy. When Tom Chilton took the lead, I have to admit, from where I was, I thought he was a lap down. It didn't make any sense at first until I could see the time screens. It was a bit mad, but in the aftermath of the race, I actually found out something about touring cars that I'd not thought about before. About 20 minutes after the wet race, while interviewing a driver, I leaned against the wet side used in the race and they were still very, very warm. Not quite hot, but for 20 minutes after the race, they were a lot warmer than what I thought they would be, because I really did think that they'd have cooled a lot more in that time, because it wasn't exactly warm either. Ash spoke of the off-season development and how the addition of row bottom to the 3 already in the team had been a massive plus.
There's still 4 guys pushing me. It's just nice having, obviously, Robot on here. He's a proven driver. He knows how to pedal one of these things. So it's just meant that our winter testing has, well, you can see it's just played dividends. It's me and Dan and the other two, we've really put in a lot of work into the car, and it just shows.
Because of all this, the car was a beast, and Robo taking pole. And across the weekend, Camish took 2 wins. In race 3, in damp conditions, Sutton just unleashed the results of that work and climbed up to 3rd, which was not bad considering how the day started with the DNF. When you get your token media pass, you commit to attending and covering in person across the season at least 8 races. For the British Touring Car Championship in 2023, I did 9 of the 10 rounds plus media day. But Brands Hatch on the Indy layout for the second race of the year was the one that I missed. You see, I covered 2 championships. As you can probably tell, I'm from far up north. I mean, Croft is a trip south for me. And the other series that I covered was at Croft that weekend. So these photos are from Media Day, which was at Brands Hatch, on the Indy layout, so just for the purpose of this part it fits, instead of sticking a bit Media Day thing at the beginning, I suppose. And it'll be back to normal service for the rest of the rounds, but here, FP1, FP2 and Q1 all return to 2nd place. Qualifying 2 placed Sutton 4th on the grid. For the races, there was a 2nd, and the 1st win of the year, which was in race 2, and another race win in the 3rd, after going from 11th after Ricky Collard was stripped of the win for track limits, meaning Sutton picked up a record 62 points from a possible 67. Round 3 was a scorcher, as the UK and the Championship settled in for some blistering weather, and the 2nd milestone of the year was broached after the Brands Hatch points haul. We'll come to that in a second, but the 3/10 gap he had to Ingram was quite impressive at the end of qualifying. Snetterton is a long circuit, but the lap for pole was still a stronger. One thing that never fails to surprise in the BTCC, however, is the heat, and by that I don't mean just hot days like this. If you spent any time around club racing cars, you know they get warm. You can feel it when they come out for a session. But British touring cars, I guess fans who don't get near them don't realise just how hot these things get. Really, when you start to get close, those massive brakes and around the exhaust, the engine bay, I tell you, it's cooking. I tell you wouldn't want to go sticking your hands around the wheel arch or anywhere near where the exhaust outlets are. In fact, up the rear door, the heat up it is burny hot. Here on race day, there was always going to be a tactic, and if it went to plan, it would lead to hidden benefits slightly leading into the next round. For the Snetterton meeting, all 3 tyre compounds had to be run. The ideal result would be soft, medium and 2 wins from the first 2 races, with the hope that everybody follows and everybody goes to the hard tyres for the reverse grid race and just get the best result possible in that one. And that plan played out. 2 well-delivered wins were brought about, and adding to the 2 at Brands, it meant that he was the first driver since Alan Menu in 1997 to bag 4 on the trot, and a 4th on hards in the last race was driven by inspiration. And it gave a little bit of data for what was coming next.
I was never getting the 3rd, never. That was impossible. The speed difference when I was on the hard and you got like you saw Camish on a soft, there's like nearly a 2-second speed difference, so you're never going to compete with that. But obviously to come away with a P4, whatever we ended up in, we had to still move forward off of our grid spot. I can't really ask for much more.
There's a thing back in the 60s where one of the old F1 bosses said when a driver becomes a father, they lose a seconds. Have you heard that one before?
I have heard that, and, yes. And a few people have also told me you lose 2 cents. Well, I believe I found 2. So
yeah.
no, it's just it almost gave me like a new lease of life to some extent.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Just turning up, doing a job.
And
One day,
kids.
one day I'm hoping I can sit him down and go, look, when you were a month old, I was doing this, and I wanted to be a part of the whole journey and experience it, and that's part and parcel.
And how to set it up for one Thruxton. I mean, in terms of the car and running on all hard tyres and what WSR's got and whatnot.
Yeah, I think obviously just coming off of running a hard, and then the next time we get in the car is going to be on hard. It's actually quite a nice thing to have.
Yeah.
I've got an idea of what the car does and stuff like that, but obviously Thruxton's such a different surface, and you only get one lap of a tyre, so it is a little bit different, but it's still a nice thing to have in the memory bank.
Okay, just going to briefly interrupt proceedings, just for a moment. I assume most of you are watching this because you're fans of touring car racing or motorsport photography. That means this is the place for you. You know, because this season we've put up over 40 vids about touring car racing in the UK and racing photography combined. Like this one here about BTCC destroying me balls. This one here about modern games and sims. Oh, these daft little postcard vids from touring car races with behind the scenes stuff cut in and whatnot. And of course, also photography stuff like this. If you subscribe, then you'll find in 2024 we've got quite an exciting lineup of stuff coming. Higher quality in a way that you won't find elsewhere because of the access that we're able to get as journalists and photographers. If you're a fan of BTCC and TCR racing, then this channel for 2024 is the place where you need to be. So if it's of interest, go on, click that subscribe button, and once the season gets back underway, hopefully you'll not be disappointed. Aerowash was the buzzword at Thruxton. The dirty air there had a difficulty in catching and passing in the pack. Combined with everybody using hard tyres for every race, it left some parameters equal, but others, well, Josh Coote took the practice sessions. It looked like the combination of Thruxton, King Kirk and his former Dynamics Honda would be the one to beat, but come qualifying, this was a beat down. The unequal hybrid rules has meant a disadvantage to the leaders, but it didn't slow Sutton. He grabbed pole by 0.2 of a second at the flat-out speedball. The calls were that NAPA needed their engines turning down, but where were the rest of the team? Camish was in 9th, a full 0.6 back, and that suggested it was a driver at the top of his game, gelling with the team and getting everything right. It was just next level stuff. The Saturday night though, taking a detour for me, was interesting. An early Thruxton finish meant a bit of sightseeing, which I don't usually do, at two places that disturbs anyone of my age: Watership Down and Greenham Common. There was no rabid fascist ultra violence in the hills. The nuclear weapons are long gone, with both places that offered childhood nightmares, one of being burned to death in an atomic firestorm, looking beautiful and serene in the late evening sun. And serene is how Sutton would seem on Sunday. Again, 2 wins. Hard work made it look easy. And the feeling from rivals on pit lane was less measured than how they shared things on TV. There were some seriously despondent drivers and team members who already seemed ready to give up on the title. Sutton, though, was already working out how to take it.
Has anybody said anything about turning your engine down?
They can, but it's not the engine, is it? So
Exactly.
they can say what they want, just go look at the speed traps.
There has been some words said about it's obviously always going to come across when people are unhappy that they're getting their arses kicked. But coming for the next race, being in the pack with the same tyres and not being able to rake out, do you think that's going to...
I don't know, to be fair.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I
mean, you and yourself, do you feel like you found like a kind of like zenith of your performance as a driver?
I'd say I'm in my absolute best I've ever been as a driver in my entire life. So, just so in tune with a car and extracting every last ounce of performance, and just at one, I can't really complain.
Does it get a bit lonely out there sometimes?
No,
it's nice to have a little bit of competition.
I'm a racer at heart, so obviously getting stuck in will be good, and obviously we've got that now, and we're pulling 12 out for the reverse grid, but you'll always take a lonely race at the front for sure. I know there's not one driver on this grid that won't take that.
Yeah. In terms of the championship though, at what point do you start thinking, I know you're always collecting points, and obviously at the minute you're in a rich vein of form, but at what point do you start thinking strategically about the championship?
We thought about it since round one.
Right.
To be honest with you, we had that mentality after Donington just to get back on the saddle and give it our all, and kind of get that momentum going. So it's always in the back of the mind. You always look at points, you're always thinking about leader lap, fastest lap, stuff like that. But yeah, we're going to touch wood we don't, but one weekend we're going to turn up and it's not going to be our weekend, so we just got to maximise while we can.
Yeah, does any of that come back to Donington losing points there? Did you work on that, thinking that has to be my weekend where it went wrong?
I look at it, each year you have one bad weekend.
Yeah.
I've already had that.
Yeah.
So I can't really afford to have another one, and if I do, I need to make sure I'm maximising everything up to that point. There's a lot of drivers here with weekends, or a bad weekend in hand, so yeah, you have to run the numbers all the time.
And Alton Park, how are you looking forward to that?
Yeah, I love Alton. It's a proper attacking track. We were really good there last year when the car maybe wasn't in its prime. We couldn't quite catch the high and high, so I'm hoping with the upgrades and the development we've had with the car and the homework I've done on myself, I'm just hoping we turn up with an even better package.
Those drivers who felt like it was over at Thruxton didn't have to wait long before hope was restored. Pole was clinched in the two-part session, with Sutton being the only driver in part 1 in the top 10 shootout to get into the 1:24 bracket at Alton Park. It was baking hot, tiring even, but Sunday was predicted to be held in torrential conditions after race 1.
What was that like?
Good. It was quite nice. We put a good prep lap in Q1. The 24.9 that I did, it was like, right, this is just get one on the board, a nice sensible time, because we actually rolled out at the start of Q1 on a used set of softs, so something we carried over from Snap, I believe, just to get a feel for the balance. Obviously we hadn't run a soft all day, so we didn't want to waste a new set to do that. We then put obviously a new set on, put the time on the board, 24.9. It's like, right, okay, that was a good lap, all within track limits, clean, tidy. So I knew there was a little bit more to come, and we found that in Q2 when it mattered, and that extra 10th ultimately we did 2 laps good enough for pole, which was nice.
And the little black mark on the front right, was that from this session?
Just playing with the circuit furniture, you know. It's there to be played with. We've got a nice little flap on the tyre stacks, and I look at that as lap time, so I make the most of that. It's going to be tricky. I think we're all going to be sat and ahhing what the weather's going to do, and I think that's the biggest thing. It's very hot, it could be humid, it could play a big factor of it. Obviously, if it rains, or it's planning to rain for race 3, everyone's going to be on the softs for race 1 and race 2, because we all want to avoid the hard, but who knows, it could be wet for race 1, and that could really throw it up in the air.
I could put together a video just on the subject of driver psychology. Being a journalist as well as a photographer, I get to see up close the entire grid before qualifying session or race as they prepare. It's sometimes something that doesn't really appear or translate in magazines or TV. I mean, take Jake Hill for a start. He's one of the more intense drivers. He's in the zone all day. It's like he switches on when he lands at the track on race day, and that's his only setting. He's probably the most intense driver in that respect on the grid. Colin Turkington, incredibly professional. And when I say incredibly professional, I mean like Formula 1 levels. Those preparation levels are way above any other driver. Tom Ingram is Tom Ingram, the Tom you see on TV or in the paddock, but it's his eyes. Once he grabs that helmet, he's a different beast, and he seems to be able to decompress very easily after a race, which not all drivers do. Ricky Collard, fairly bouncy, has a mad exercise routine. Dan Lloyd checks out his car, switches into a focus mode. Ash Sutton, he seems to build up to it. In the garage, checking out support races on screen, he doesn't seem to settle into a conversation unless it's about the car. It's as if he just wants the time between prepping and the lights going out at the start of the race to disappear. Here, Hill being in the zone allowed him to take his first 2 wins of the season, beating off Sutton to the top step twice with Ingram third. The trio marked themselves out here as the leaders and the challengers. But race 3 though, it was over just after turn 1, after Sutton had went for a closing gap at the start. For rivals, suddenly there was hope. Just as the 6 weeks summer break kicked off. There was a mid-season test at Donington. I was meant to go, and I did go actually. But for about 45 minutes. Any other year and I'd have stuck with it and I'd have been there all day, but I made one too, and I had to go to a few shows, you know. We played Nottingham the night before, and we couldn't hang around Donington if we wanted to be at the front for Birmingham that evening. But it was a home fixture when the racing resumed. My home track, a weekend of successes and disaster, certainly for me. Croft is the track where I get to do a full 3-day weekend, and because of that there's a bit of a more relaxed pace to things. The touring cars aren't on track on Friday, but it means I've bagged shots of the support series before the weekend starts properly, plus there's plenty of chat and the stories begin to form. I think you know some of them. Saturday morning kicked off with a driver briefing in the Toker tent. Obviously a pile of stories came out there, big stories, but they're not part of this bid. They were in Touring Car magazine, however. But with Darrell de Leon making his debut, there was a bit of ribbon from Alan Gowney and Watson to welcome him to the series before the proper stuff got underway. It was measured and balanced for the morning for Sutton before qualifying, where NAPA racing really did break out. Camish snatched pole from row bottom, with Sutton taking third.
The other day when I was out, I came during the week, at Tower there's the bump under braking. We think it had dropped. Has it dropped?
It does feel more aggressive, but the car's more aggressive this year, so it's hard to relay. But yeah, we noticed we actually, when we hit the brake pedal, the rear wheels are actually off the floor for a period, and then they land back down. So yeah, whether that's the track changing, I don't know.
Yeah, but new engineering and whatnot. How's it working?
Yeah, the car. Well, hopefully that proves our point here with the 2 Dans on the front row. Me following up with no hybrid. The car's just in a really good place.
Yeah. And seeing business as usual. Try and grab the wins or
yeah,
points.
For sure. I think you got to be a bit more sensible with your teammates around. But at the same time, I've got Hill and I've got Ingram behind me, so there's not so much risk that's got to be had here. Obviously, Hill's going to be quick off the line. I'd like to make progress for sure, but we'll see how we get off the line. We've got to be sensible with this.
Yeah, and you was one of the few people to come here pre-season. How much has the car developed since then?
Oh, massive. We come here with the 2022 cars, pretty much. We were just focusing on a few little things, but it was a complete washout. So yeah, we didn't really get a lot of dry running. I think we did 2-3 laps max, but the rest of it was torrential rain.
It was another 3 compound weekend. In race 1, Camish and Rowbottom went soft with Sutton on the slightly slower medium. Camish led away with Rowbottom in the hunt. Back in 2022 at Thruxton, Camish had surrendered a victory to Sutton to help his title tilt. That didn't happen here, but Rowbottom followed the same party line and gave his second place to Ash for the points.
Different taste to the other two?
Yeah, it was... we didn't want to do what BMW did at SNEP. We wanted to do a bit of a split strategy. Ultimately, there's no point in us all being on the same tyre. No one's going to get that break. So we needed points. So I took the gamble. Obviously, it was a bit of a gamble when we found out the BMs were on the softs. They paid off. We had some really strong pace in the car. Like surprisingly good, if I'm honest. It was. We made a few changes overnight. And they paid off. Yesterday, my engineer Tony wanted to make those changes in qualifying, and I was stubborn, and I said no, I want to stick with it. I've got it in me. But ultimately, realistically, looking back now, I should have let him do the changes, and well, who knows, it could have been a different qualifying session. But Yeah, for sure the car was on rails then.
Yeah, are you going to be studying their data for the softs to see?
I think we've got a nice we're in a nice place with the car.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
We just put the softs on and it should just
Are you hoping
be
for a bit of
on.
rain later on so there's no need to run hard?
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Would
That'd be nice.
The second race saw Sutton start with the pace advantage being on the softs. He aced the start, commanded his position and went on to gain his 7th win of the year. I caught most of that shooting from a position I hadn't been to for a while, and I busted the shutter on my camera body towards the end of the race, meaning that the bottom of all the photos were a little bit Donald Ducked. But I didn't realise, however, that I shot the whole third race with the same effect. Thankfully, with a bit of cropping, most of the photos could be saved, but it was a 350 quid repair job, and that would take a while. That was only part of the disaster.
Nailed the start?
Yeah, got it for the line really clean. So I think that's probably one of the better of my starts in a front wheel drive car. I managed to get the jump on Dan and got past him. I don't think he made it particularly hard, but I still managed. I was still focused on braking late and getting the deal done deal on it. So
Managing the tyres versus what they had on behind you?
a little bit, yeah. You just never know. If the safety car comes out,
Yeah.
and you've used all the tyre up, then you're on the back foot for the rest of the race. So just focus on making sure there was something left in the tyre at the end.
6th. You pulled the best ball out, didn't you?
I couldn't have done much better than that, could I? So obviously it's a level playing field. Everyone on the hard tyre. Yeah, just see what race 3 brings.
For race 3, Sutton was out on lap 1. An accident in the middle of turn 2 ended his weekend early. For me, the disaster kept coming on and on thanks to the 2 Dan teammates. You can see the vid here, the one I mentioned earlier about gravel being used by British touring car drivers named Dan to destroy my testicles. Yeah, great. Okay, first, a couple of plugs. First, for a video on modern PC racing games back in the day. Because if you didn't know, this year's champion actually runs a sim racing company. And no, this isn't a sponsorship, but it's pure sims. If you're into racing and into racing games, nearly fell over there, fatty, then go and check them out. Right, so you're still here. That must mean that you're a real touring car fan. So, how does this interest you? This season, we're able to bring you these videos because of our day job, if you will, which is producing Touring Car Magazine. This little beauty, filled with all the latest news, reviews, opinion and articles covering British touring cars and TCR UK with a bit of historics and international tin top action. It's the magazine for you in print or in digital format. Originally called Motor Racing UK, this mag doesn't have your F1 or endurance racing. It's hardcore, in-depth touring car racing only. So why not check the link out and join the revolution? The Knockhill weekend didn't start at Knockhill for me. It started at Croft. It was a split weekend with super tourers on at my home track. I had to go. It's the law. They are super tourers. Well, the handful that turned out. Interestingly, one of them, raced by former BTCC racer Jim Pockland, and was a Vauxhall Cavalier GSI that was raced by John Collins. And there was something about it I wanted to know with the BTCC being at Knockhill. When I got to the Scottish track on Sunday, I was able to ask the man himself about it. In 1990, teammate Chris Hodgetts raced a development rear-wheel drive version of the car for a single meeting. I'd always wanted to know if Collins had actually tested it at the time, which he had. By all accounts, it was as bad as reported at the time. Imagine if they'd gone down the rear-driven route though. Considering the 1990 Cavalier was the grandfather of the Cavalier that he took the title with in 1995. Anyway, any excuse to talk about super tours. Get back onto what was happening that weekend. I had a new camera, well, a used one. And it got through the weekend, but kind of started falling apart, which seemed the case for Sutton's weekend after race 1. Qualifying, Sam grabbed 3rd place in part 1 and pole in part 2. The opening race had Sutton and Cook pull away with the makings of an absolute classic. A lap 4 moment at the chicane let Cook through into the lead. Sutton latched onto the tail of the new leader. Hill hooked onto his rear, and the threesome drove into the rain. They kept going. Sutton retook the lead at the hairpin on lap 10, but that wasn't a significant moment on the lap. From behind the leaders, Ingram pitted for wets, with 14 tours still on the board. Contact with Cook saw the Honda into the tyre wall, while Hill pitted, and out came the safety car. When the safety car came in, Sutton followed it and pitted. Not the best of time, but c'est la vie. He came out down the order and crossed the line in 8th, with title rival Ingram taking the win. Now that was interesting, because by this point I'd headed up to the pit lane, and a member of Ingram's team dropped an expletive and stated that they were going to fail the right height check. And when the defending champion and teammate Chilton were measured on the flat patch, they did fail. It's that the team was asking for a different set of rollers for wet races in 2024. The Goodyear tyres of all compounds supposedly have the same circumference, but when the wets are put on, according to what was told by a Goodyear technician, the ride height drops by 3mm. For a wet race, or a race where the weather could change, teams usually nip the car up a couple of clicks to counter it. Judging by what was said as the rollers failed to go under some parts of the splitter on the I-30, it was a costly mistake. Other teams and drivers said they'd raised their ride heights, but that's easy to say when you haven't been measured. It turned the championship even further to Ash's advantage, with Ingram out and starting from the back, but this was another title rival, handed the win and pole for race 2, which was a repeat of the previous 2 seasons for Sutton. In 2021, he forced the BMW of Turkington into a mistake there to take the win. In 2022, at the chicane, he forced the BMW of Jake Hill into a mistake to take the win. It was a ding-dong battle for the lead between the two. Sutton tried to keep all of his tricks to gain a 3-peat, but Hill staunchly and stubbornly held his head to grab the win. The best of his 6 across the year. For the finale, Sutton pulled the best ball possible, the 6. And the teams had heeded the events of race 1 and raised the ride heights. As the preparation for the race was just about done, on the grid, the heavens opened. I mean, really opened, and it was really wet. I've only been that wet at a racetrack once before in my life. This time, I was in the rain for about 90 seconds, only before hiding inside a marshal's post. That time, it was 25 minutes covering a full race. When the field was released after a safety car start, it only took 7 racing laps for Sutton to get onto the front, the lead move on pace and coming at the final hairpin. Again, it was a masterclass.
Race 2, the last 2 years I've shot from chicane and your freshets. Colin in 2001, Jake 2022, sorry. Yeah. Do you think you were going to get it a 3rd time in a row?
I was pushing for the error, I'll be honest. I don't know if you saw the cheeky little flash of the headlights and stuff on the exit. That was just to try and remind him of last year. So
he said he tried to put it out of his head, like, so it was there.
To be fair, he put up with the pressure, so fair play to him. And I gave him my all. We used the tyre so early on trying to catch him that when I did get there, I didn't have an answer for it, to be honest with you. But it was. The chicane's one of my favourite places. Shame about the reprofile curve, it's changed it slightly, but I just love this place for that reason.
And this second one, a bit wet?
Perfect, wasn't it? I'll be honest with you, I was a bit up in the air with it. I didn't want it to be changeable conditions. I wanted it to be suddenly come in, get slicks or get wets. One tyre, straight out race, that's what I wanted. We got that. Car was capable of doing it. It was, I couldn't ask for any more, I'll be honest with you.
Was there any worry about if it did dry out, like you might end up in the same kind of position as them in race 1 in terms of?
Well, no, we preempted all that. We preempted it in race 1, so we all set our changes that were needed were done early doors, so before we even hit the track. So we allowed for that. I was not concerned one bit when we come into the pit lane.
Do you want a job as me brolly carrier?
Yeah, no, that's all right.
Right, well, I'll catch you next time out. Right, cheers, take care.
The return to the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit for the first time in 21 years didn't suit the focus as much as some predicted. The mid-season test had brought up concerns about brake fade, with the 2 hairpins following long straights. but they never really materialised in the cool temperatures, especially the race that was held in the damp. And for me, that was a treat. I was the only photographer down at the hairpin on that position, managing to get shots of Sutton taking the lead from Ingram, who'd had him at the start. But it was a mixed emotion, because I was really using an old basic camera that still hadn't got me main one back after the Croft disaster. But I got through the weekend, I think. Photos seem all right enough. But there was a trip to the belly of the beast for us, because it was my first time as a guest for lunch in the Toga tent, as a guest of Goodyear, along with a couple of other journalists. The food was topper. This fat lad certainly filled his boots. Naturally, when you go in, you're reminded that any stories heard within the tent are to stay there. And I did hear one outrageous rumour. For race 2, Sutton couldn't hold off Ingram. The I-30 was in its element on the GP, lay out in the dry. But on one hand, a measured championship approach had to be made, as was the case in race 3, where in the pack, Rowbottom had a disagreement with some circuit furniture, and the result meant that the championship contenders were delayed, and Sutton, after starting 11th, was able to snatch 5th ahead of them to increase his lead.
So we'll start with race 2.
For me, that was race 2 was absolutely fine. I think Accelerate Tom had a better package, so fair play to them guys. They've beat us fair and square there. Had a small brake issue, but without it, with it, would I beat him? I don't know. But it was still nice. We ultimately what we gained in race 1, we only lost half of that in race 2. So points wise, we were still on the plus, which was positive. So it was just about staying out of trouble in race 3.
Yeah, and I mean obviously that kind of like almost levelled the scores race 2 from where you started the day in terms of winning second places. But that third race there, we are kind of settling in thinking I'm losing a few points here.
So obviously I didn't want Tom to get me, but he put a stunning lunge in at Old Hairpin. I was like, I'll let you have that one because that's a good move. But we sort of kept him busy, kept him in his mirrors. And ultimately we just sort of made sure we stayed out of trouble, picking the pieces up. And you saw that, for example, Jake, Rowbottom, Lloyd, for example, and then obviously Tom getting caught out by Rowbottom at turn 1. They all tripping over each other. I was just sort of sat there, happy to sit there. I was quite safe. I had Sam behind me, so no real pressure there. But yeah, they just sort of made my life a bit easier. It got a little bit argy-bargy. I had to be a bit careful, but ultimately it's a risk over reward, and it was worth the reward.
And where does it set your mindset for Silverstone and Brands?
I think after race 1.
Someone in Jack says as
well.
Oh,
did he? Oh, fucking awesome. Excuse that.
No. We put all the fucks in the magazine. All the and the cunts as well.
Yeah, love it. Just focus. Even from race 1 race 1 here, sorry, in the wet. Focus kind of switched to the championship. You kind of saw that there was no major fight to Tom.
Yeah.
Again, I was quite happy to sit there in race 3 behind Tom, but I'm still going to give it all guns blazing in qualifying in race 1, because if you qualify well, you can have a good result. But from that point onwards, we just got to keep our nose clean.
Yeah, and it's easy to switch off from the talk of mathematically you could do it next time.
We did have a laugh and a joke. If we outscored Ingram by 15 here and 15 again at Silverstone, it would be done. So it's just one of those. You look at it, but I pushed it aside very quickly, because if you chase it, you can suddenly lose points. So I was quite happy to come here with 37 points and leave with 37 points.
Yeah.
The fact we got leaving with I think it's 42, something like that. It's a bonus.
Brilliant.
Cheers, mate.
Take care.
You have effectively zero hybrid, and the rest of the world assumes you have one hand on the championship trophy. Where does that leave you? In the 2-part qualifying session, squeezing into 10th place to go through to part 2 was a tight one, but 5th overall for the grid, that was fairly decent. But it looked like disaster on one hand once racing got underway. Oh yeah, I had my camera back and I had to spend a bit of time tuning the settings to get them back to where I wanted them. Mikey Doble put his Power Max Daster on pole, and Ash had the 3 drivers directly behind him in the title hunt ahead of him on the grid. Doble made a bit of a mistake and went for a second green flag lap, leaving the championship top 4 is the top 4 slot, but it was starting to rain. Heavy enough that as the start lights went out, there were cars on pit lane grabbing wets. Long story short, NAPA elected to come in, knowing Ingram was coming in for wets after a couple of laps. It was a bad decision for both drivers. The pair rejoined outside the points and came home in 22nd and 23rd, which is where they would start race 2. Jake Hill won and would start from pole, but then, well, something kinda happened. Hill had race 2 in the back, until a recurring electrical fault with the boost sensor hit yet again, and the car started to lose pace after a safety car, with a misfire engine sounding like it was ripping itself to shreds. He dropped down the order. Ingram and Sutton had been fighting through the field. Ingram quite a few places behind Sutton after being caught up in the mid-pack kerfuffle. The NAPA driver went up to 18th on lap 1, 17th on 2, 15th on 3, 13th on lap 5, 12th and 11th on the next 2, 9th and 8th on laps 8 and 9, then 7th for a few laps on the next tour, and 6th before a safety car. Once back to racing, he gained places up to 2nd with some savvy moves before spending a couple of laps hunting Aaron Taylor-Smith, before nabbing the lead at the first corner, the last lap, to take probably his best in the BTCC and one of the all-time great drives. The point being, Ingram had climbed to 3rd in an equally impressive drive. It really was a race for the ages. The 3rd race saw the pair climb up the order again from 10th and 12th for an Ingram 2nd and a Sutton 3rd. Normally a race like that would be a wow factor performance, but it wasn't quite what the race 2 had given.
Do you like this hybrid thing?
I love it. I've missed it. I've really not had the use or that form of hybrid since round 1.
Yep.
So we really maximised the hybrid usage there, and especially when it got to the likes of Aaron and utilising it in all our passes. Yeah, I feel like we maximised every bit of performance we had there.
Where was your head after race 1?
It was tough. It was really tough. We covered off Tom, and that's all we could do. We can't cover off 2 cars, and Drake pulled a blinder and got himself the win. So you're then starting at the back. One of your main rivals now is on pole and looking like a race wins in hand.
Yep.
And we felt fortunate that he had an issue, for sure. That was really his race. But we still did an outstanding job to get ourselves in that reverse grid, and then obviously when the safety car came out, that just sort of worked perfectly for us to bunch it back up and let me have a stab at a win. So we weren't really aiming there, we were aiming for top 8.
Yeah.
Safety car come out, I went, I'll push for a podium, but a win is something else.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, like, were you thinking more one hand on the championship as opposed to a win?
100%. But then at the same time, I could see old Tinger's coming after me, so I had to be careful. But yeah, just saw his lights there, just made sure there was always a car between us when we were progressing, he was as well. So yeah, perfect scenario.
And at the last round you said you were counting 15 points a race is what you were looking for, kind of thing. Are you still counting like that now?
I mean, it's made our life a bit easier where what we've just gone and achieved. We can relax a little bit in race 3, survive, and then go to Brands.
It's just a short drive home for you, isn't it?
Yeah, well,
and a happy one.
I know.
Titles in front and rear drive cars, 6 pole positions, 12 wins, a 45-point gap. That was a season. But heading to Brands Hatch, that still had to be achieved. It meant that Sutton had to finish ahead of Ingram in the first race to seal the crown. Sutton took a point first off with pole and qualifying. In the race, adding the fastest lap and race-led points, and the victory, of course, was all done by lunchtime on finals day, but Ingram made him work for it. The pair were possessed and just upped and offed along the road, leaving the rest of the field to race as if they were in a different championship. It was the same for race 2. Even though the title was settled, the duo made a mockery of the rest of the grid as they shot off down the road with their own battle. Hill took the final race, but of course, all eyes were on the new champion. After all, he'd equalled the most titles in the BTCC with his 4th. He'd taken 12 wins, equalling the record set by Menu in 1997, but crucially, he'd won the title in front-wheel drive car, whereas the previous 3 were in a rear-wheel drive car. The first driver to grab a championship with both formats. That's something he was incredibly proud of.
Donington at the start of the year when the season didn't exactly start how we wanted it to. It's quite a different emotion at this point, isn't it?
100%. Yeah,
what's that, 12 wins now, X amount of part, God knows, I don't know. I'm just trying to soak up the day, if I'm honest. It's been a faultless weekend so far. We've scored maximum points that we can. So yeah, just excited to now go into race 3. We pulled reverse grid 9, so shouldn't be as painful as the 12, but we'll see what we can do.
How's your kind of like? I mean, this 4 times is just a normal thing for you, with it. How do you?
It is. It's still special, though. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
it's, 4 times, and then to do it front wheel drive and rear wheel drive is mega as well. So it's just the whole thing all together, and I think that's now the most laps ever led in a British touring car season, followed by probably the most wins and so forth. There's a few records there behind this, and it's going to be nice to sit there at the end of the day, tally it all up, and enjoy what we've done.
Are you aiming to outdo this?
Depends what outdoing it means.
I mean, all seriously, do you think there's a possibility that there might be a way of trying to pull things back and even things up for next season in terms of the way that the championship is for hybrid models?
We'll see. I'm not too sure what the plans are. I know there's talks of doing stuff hybrid wide. Ultimately, if you've got the right car underneath you can extract lap time out of it in places you didn't think, and ultimately that's all we've done this year. So yeah, we're waiting to see.
2023 was a year where some fans bemoaned the racing as being boring, partially because of one driver dominating and hybrid rules that didn't match previous ballast. But was it really the case? Sutton didn't dominate the season. For notes, check what Max Verstappen did in F1. That's dominating, but Ash was the dominant driver. And there's a subtle difference between dominating and being dominant. As for the racing, no, it wasn't boring. It wasn't as random as, say, 2018, but the stats, if you research them, show that even though the champ took 12 wins, there's been more action in the top 10 June races in the last couple of seasons, which kind of makes the crown a bit more of a success than the 2021 title. But I suppose there's only one person who's qualified to give us some closing remarks.
4 titles now, you've equalled Andy Mouse and Colin Turkington. I mean, we can go on about all these records you smashed. To begin with, just to summarise your feelings, obviously, because this is a different way you've done this championship.
Yeah, it's pretty surreal still at the minute, for sure. But I think the biggest thing for me was being the only driver to do it in front wheel drive and rear wheel drive. That's the bit that's sunk in properly so far. But it's when I wake up tomorrow morning, A, with a headache, but B, not living a dream but a reality. It's waking up and realising what you've actually gone and achieved. So yeah, for sure this next week's going to be just soaking up everything that we've done throughout the year, this weekend, and as a team, just to thank everyone that's been involved.
I know each title has been different in the way you've done it, but does this kind of feel the most complete because of the way you've gone about it? You know, as I said just then, you've literally demolished every single record of the modern era.
I mean, it's going to be hard to beat this year. I've had my little boy turn up this year, which is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And then to go.
Does that change you as a driver?
100%.
Your motivation and the way you've approached it?
Yeah, my approach, my prep, motivation. I want to go and achieve more and more and more. All just to make him proud of his dad. So yeah, big shout out to my little boy Sonny and my fiancée Ellie. But then yeah, just the prep that's gone into this year has been something else, and I've just got to keep going at it and keep trying to unlock this new and developed app.
How much more is there to come? Because me and him have said that technically you've still not done this in a car that's been built from Ash Sutton.
No, don't get me wrong.
This
Ford Focus has been pretty special and pretty dominant, but it's going to be hard to top this car. Even if we rock up with a new car in a few years' time or do something special, is it still going to be as good as this car? I don't know. So don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean we're going to give up, but for sure we're going to have to dig very deep to beat what we've done this year.
Without giving away your secrets, we've seen this car on the grid for a while, winning races, being towards the front, but we've never seen this level of performance. So what do you think's been the key to the way that the car's come forwards this season?
I think there's a massive part of the way all the development that's gone into the car over the winter, what the guys have done with the car. It's kind of worked to not my favour, but into what I like from a car. I want a car that I can really rely on, say an aero package or a front axle, and make it nice and nervous and loose. But I've also then developed my driving style to suit that car. So the car hasn't just been an easy thing to drive. I've had to tailor myself to suit that. So the combined elements of the car and myself and what the guys have given me is
the key to all that.
And is it one of those, it's not one big thing that you've unlocked over the winter, it's lots of little things that you've tweaked here and there?
Yeah, we didn't open the toolbox and go, oh, there it is. We've got that. We opened every single drawer, lifted up every single tool in it, and found all the little bits, and they all add up. Every single one of them adds up. And if you know what they are, you know how to utilise them on track, and that's what I have with the engineers, especially Antonio. He's been phenomenal, and just dialing it in, making sure I know exactly what that car's capable of doing, and I go and extract it from it.
It sounds stupid, but would you have been able to do this without him at the side?
It's a tough one. It is a tough one. It would have been hard. It would have been really hard. He is something special, and together I'd like to think we've got a decent army in terms of what we can do with any car on the grid. This is now the third car that I've proved our championship in. There's not many guys who say they've done that, so that's a massive factor to that man there. But it would be very, very hard to beat without him.
Tony was even involved on your first title, wasn't he? He wasn't your race engineer.
Yeah, he was our data engineer, and he was very new to it. Obviously, he worked for X-Track before, and he just come in and soaked up every bit of information that he possibly could. And obviously, you had people like Carl Foe there and guys like that were overseeing the project. And the last thing Carl said to me when he left to go to Oz was, "He's the boy you need." So I took his advice, and look what we've gone and done together.
And obviously, speaking of the team itself, obviously, a lot of Motor Alliance, they've been on the grid for a number of years, but it seems to me that Pete Osborne's really galvanised this team and brought the right people in. How can you speak on that?
Yeah, Pete's a very successful businessman. He knows how to turn things around, and he has done exactly that with this team. He's made us all work as one. There's no divides. There's 4 cars here. There's 50 plus staff here on a weekend, and everyone has the same goal. And to do that with that many people is quite a statement. But then not only to do that, to pull in the commercial deals that he's done with NAPA Racing UK, to sign multi-year deals, put drivers like myself in the car. I think every team owner on this grid aspires to be like Pete and what he's done. So massive credit to the Osborne family, and yeah, I can't thank him enough for this opportunity.
If I could just talk about the races today. I mean, the first race was sort of fairly clear cut with you and Tom both on the soft tyres, but he was having a go, wasn't he?
Yeah, for sure. I think he definitely kept us honest. The opening lap, he showed his nose at turn 4. We managed to sort of rise above that one. And just get our head down. The clean air helps here, plays a big part of it. But ultimately, we had a car that could just keep going faster and faster. So once we got the fast lap, it was just a case of managing it.
Yeah, because you used your hybrid early on, and then that late safety car came, and Tom still had a lap left.
Ultimately, the benefit of going for fastest lap, even if Tom did beat me, we still would win the championship.
Yeah.
So the extra point was everything. So I used hybrid in race 1 and 2 to go and get that fastest lap, because ultimately I wanted to go for the outright most fastest laps in the season as well. So there was 2 factors behind that.
Yeah, and race 3 was just warfare, wasn't it? And you and Tom had a little coming together. And
yeah, it was. If I'm honest, that is a proper touring car race, and unfortunately we were just on the receiving end. Me and Tom got hooked, and there was a big chop from him. Whether it was intentional or not, it doesn't matter. But ultimately, it didn't affect what we were chasing, which was the manufacturers. So yeah, gutted we didn't quite make the progress I wanted to. We got sort of to 5th or something like that, and then obviously that happened. So it was a shame, but yeah, please we still can worry the manufacturers.
Was it grass in the radiator and stuff like that?
It was actually the sign, I believe.
The sign?
Yeah, the sign got stuck to the rack, and water sent shot through the roof, air charge, so had to box. But luckily the safety car bumped us all back up.
Yeah, you know it then went on to Chilton's car, and it did for him.
Yeah, I did see that, to be fair. I looked in the rear view and it went off of mine onto his, so that board's not light, that's for sure.
We've talked about stats and records. People will probably forget that compared to some drivers, you've not been in this championship for a long time, but that's 4 titles, you're up in the top 6 in terms of overall wins. How far can you go, or how far do you want to go in this championship?
I mean, I'd love to go out as the best touring car driver ever. How I do that is another story. If that means I'm here for multi-years, then I'll be here and I'll be part of the furniture. If it means another commercial deal comes along and it pulls me away, then it pulls me away. So I can only go where the drives are.
Thruxton earlier this year, you said you were in a position where you're at the zenith of your driving. How do you improve on that?
I don't know, if I'm honest. You just have to keep going home, looking deeper and deeper, turning over the sofas, looking under the rugs, seeing if there's anything left. But yeah, I have dug every bit of performance that I feel like I've got.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm not going to stop keep digging.
And like Donington, Croft and Houghton, was there any point where you actually doubt? Because I know through the year you'll be thinking, we're all thinking he's got it much earlier than you. When did you really think?
Good question. Good question. Still, sort of coming off the back of Donington was when I felt like we were in a really good place. Car, me mentally, team were fully behind me, NAPA were fully behind me, and that was kind of the point where I was right, this is mine to lose. I just need to really focus on keeping out of trouble, keeping my nut down, and doing the best job I can.
What do you rate as your best drive of the season? I think 23rd to 1st is probably the fastest.
I mean, especially when you think all odds are against you in terms of Jake winning, obviously race 1. Should have really won race 2 if he didn't have his damage or have his issue. So to storm through when it's looking like it's not looking too good, to come through and take the win was something special. So that for sure is one that I will remember for a long, long time.
Great.
Cheers, mate.
Till next year.